Good morning, everyone. This is the Vermont House Committee on Commerce and Economic Development. It is Thursday, April 17th, 2025 at 9:03 in the morning. So we're beginning our day having a discussion with our lumber dealers. And we have Bill Smith with us. Bill, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, good morning. I'm the paid lobbyist for the Vermont Retail Lumber Dealers Association. And who are they? Well, they're not the forest product folks who are out there. These are the folks that sell building supplies to our contractors throughout the state. I think including representative at the other end of the table buys from a few of our members. Thanks, Kirk. Anyway, so you don't want to talk to me today. You want to talk to what I call real people. And I brought them here with you, and they're happy to talk to you about it. And if I could, I'd like to kind of step out quickly and just do around the room, let you know who folks are and who they work for and where their headquarters is around the state. Want to start? If we could, Mr. Chairman, start with Claudia Holman over there.
I'll stand up. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us. I am Claudia Holman. I am president currently of VRLDA. I work for Bethel Mills. Bethel Mills has been in business for 240 years, actually over 240 years. And we have 8 locations throughout the state, starting from, again, Bethel, and then we go into Brandon. So we are many of the areas that we live and work.
WW Building Supply. Have 2 locations in Ukraine and Wilmington. And they were for years.
Good morning, I'm Katie Gallagher. I actually am an associate director with the BRLDA, which means I'm a manufacturer representative. Company that I work for is Huber Engineered Woods, which is a building materials manufacturing company, but we support our retail lumber dealers in their efforts here.
Good morning. My name is Jeremy Baker. I'm the ex officio of the VRLDA. I'm also on the executive committee for the NRLA. Sorry about all the acronyms, but this shortens the discussion and we have only precious time. I'm a proud father of 2, raising my family in Londonderry, Vermont and Rutland, Vermont. I'm a lifelong Vermonter, 4th generation. I work for RK Miles, which has 9 locations, but 7 of which are in Vermont. I'm the fleet and safety director there. And I really just appreciate the fact that you guys are obligating our request, and would like to say that I sympathize with the challenges that you face, and we're here really to support you more than anything. So thank you.
Good morning. I'd like to say exactly what Jeremy said. My name is Lance Allen. I'm a director on the VRLD. Also been in the business industry since I was a kid, and I also work for RK Miles.
Tim Combs from Goodrow Lumber in East Middlebury. Past owner of Goodrow's. I actually sold last year to a couple of young individuals that wanted to come into our industry, which is great. I'm the ex officio of the VRLDA and past legislative chair. And we thank you for taking the time to hear us today.
Brian Moses. My family owns Britton Lumber Company in Fairleigh, Vermont. The brother and I are the next generation, firmly established business, willing to do anything we can to support the retail members. We're a wholesaler, which means we're a trucking operation as much as we sell building supplies. But yeah.
I guess that's all of us here today, Mr. Chairman, but I guess I'm going to step aside. I know Jeremy wanted to come in the chair and hoping to have a good give and take. We'll give you our take on things. Oh, sorry, Jeff, I'm sorry. Over there like a page.
Not talking.
Former page, Jeff.
I'm the branch manager of Curtis Lumber Williston. We have 2 locations in Vermont, Williston and Burlington, growing a family of 6. Young and deep in stuff.
Mr. Chair, I also have Francis Palieski. He's the guy who signs my check, so I can't.
Good morning, my name is Francis Palieski. I'm the Director of Government Affairs for the Northeastern Retail Lumber Association, which is the RLD is our local affiliate. We represent more than 1,000 independent, locally family-owned businesses, just like these guys, all through the Northeast. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter.
Do I sit? Okay.
The hot seat.
Good morning to everyone. Thank you for coming in and willing to speak with us this morning. We'd like to hear what's happening out in the industries, your challenges, things we're doing that we could do better, things that you need that we might be able to help you. There's never a guarantee, but we certainly appreciate you coming in today.
Sure.
Probably before we get started, I just ask everybody, members around the table, to introduce themselves as well. So I'll start with myself. I'm Mike Marcotte. I'm chair of the committee. I'm from Coventry, and I represent Coventry, Irisburg, Newport Town, Troy J. Westfield, Lowell, and Eden.
Edie Branning, Vice Chair of the Committee, representing Jericho and Underhill.
I'm Abby Duke. I represent part of Burlington.
Herb Olson, Bristol, Lincoln, Moncton, Starksboro. I moved our house with Goodrow Lumber Materials.
I won't hold it against you.
All right.
Emily Ferris Duncan. I represent Wilmington, Whitingham, and Halifax.
Nice. I'm Jonathan Cooper. I live in Pownell, in the southeastern corner of the state, and the Bennington district includes Reedsboro, Searsburg, Stanford, and Woodford. And when we redid our daughter's bedroom, it was with RK Miles.
Hey. So far, you're my favorite. All right. I want to interrupt and say, our association is made up of direct competitors. So we are all we're in the American League East competing against each other, but the great thing about it is we don't care because we're respectful of each other. We have developed great relationships with all of the businesses. And we understand that. I think it was Ben Franklin that said, if we don't hang together, then surely we'll each hang alone. That's kind of been our motto for the past few years. Claudia and I are, we are like the dynamic duo that just attack any issue that comes up. And I just want to make it clear that we are in direct competition with each other, but at the same time, we're in line with each other step by step to make sure that the industry continues to move forward. So,
And to Jeremy's point, a few years back, we realized that we had to come together as an organization. And so when we go out to our events, we wear a jacket that says BRLDA,
Yeah.
not Bethel.
rather than the
not
individual
RK,
businesses.
Because we are now here for the state.
Yeah.
And for the kids within the state, not just for, I want employees or you want employees, but I do.
She's up next.
Dave Bosch, and I live in Clarendon Springs. I
Ah.
represent Rutland 2, which is Wallingford, Clarendon, West Rutland, and the bulk of Rutland town.
Nice.
And unfortunately, that gives me the home of the.
You're a Valley guy.
No, late lamented Rutland Plywood and Mill River
Oh,
Lumber Company.
sure.
I mean,
Mill River was just recently purchased, though,
was it?
Yes.
Oh, that's good news. I
by
heard
a
that.
businessman out of the Londonderry area. Yeah, Hunter Excavating.
And I'm not a forester, but I'm retired from 39 years with the U.S. Forest Service.
Ah, I have a degree in forestry, so you and I'll see each other at lunch.
We will.
I'm Tony Meklis. I represent most of Milton, a little bit of Georgia, and my house is so old.
I guess maybe it was Claudia's company because they came over on the Mayflower.
Michael Booten. I live in Berry City, so some throw away from where you guys are currently located.
Monique Priestley, Bradford, Fairleigh, West Fairleigh, so Britain and Bethel Mills. And I just want to put, I have a shadow here today, so I'm gonna ditch out, but it's not because I don't appreciate all of you.
Kirk White, I'm the ranking member of the committee. I represent Bethel, Rochester, Stockbridge, and Hancock. And I went to high school with the Durfee family.
Yeah. I'm losing here. I'm losing. I needed to invite some ringers.
So good morning.
Good morning.
We have, of course, most important person here, the Queen of Commerce.
That's right. I represent this corner here.
It doesn't sound like you want to expand that little corner.
That's all right.
So I'm not going to waste your time on this because this is our written testimony. I'm not going to read it because I think that would just be redundant. The message that I think that we all want to get across is by the end of our meeting is that we care. ultimately, that's, I think, what we want to let everybody here know. And I want you to realize too, that our Bright Futures event, we did a survey, and did we hand this survey out to members? Okay, so we'll get this to you, but there's a student from Cold Hollow Career Center, and the thing that he said he learned something new was that you guys care. So we have a student that's identifying with us as an organization that cares about their future in the state. And Governor Scott came as our keynote speaker. He delivered an incredible message to them. I wouldn't call it a speech as much as I would call it a plea for them to consider the trades moving forward, to stay in the trades, and most importantly, stay in Vermont, understanding all the challenges that face them as young people in the state. We're very invested in the career technical ed portion of things. We understand the challenges you're facing right now with all of the redistrictization of your school boundaries and all of those challenges as well. If we can be of any help in that effort, we would like to have a seat at the table. We are stand for what we believe in rather than fight against what we don't. That the latter, I think, is you're immediately coming from a point of weakness, which is not where we want to be. We identified as a group probably 5 years ago that workforce development was important, and we didn't wait for anybody else to show us how to do things to help that. So with Claudia's guidance, we started the Bright Futures event. It's grown into an event that we're at a point where we're either going to have to start to turn people away or go to a bigger facility. We have a tremendous amount of interest from vendors. We have a tremendous amount of interest from students, and we want to even begin to invite students in the middle school because we believe they need to be given that opportunity and that track earlier rather than just high school. So I've got all kinds of people here that are experts. If you ask us a question we can't answer, I'll make a note in my book. Hopefully I don't have to open this book to make a note because I believe that this group of people can answer any of your questions. So I'd like to actually open the floor to you to ask any that you may have about our organization. We could talk for 3 hours, so we'll try to keep it as short as the time allows us.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I think a few years ago, we joined you and it might have been your kickoff, I'm not sure. But
yeah,
we were down in Randolph.
Yeah, that's right.
It was really interesting. It was good to see a good amount of students there and a lot of displays. And I think it's a great event. So appreciate you.
Yeah, and we appreciated the fact that you brought your group at that point, because in the beginning, our concept was we wanted to be a conduit between this group and the career technical education centers. And we still do that, but no offense to everybody in the room, we started to focus more on the career tech folks because that's where, that's where we feel the most impactful.
But, and I think, you alluded to the issues that are going on with our education system, but I think for us, it's an opportunity. This committee's had workforce for the last 10 years as part of our charge and what we look at, and we've been pushing career technical education for those 10 years, not getting very far because of all the challenges in the education world outside of CTE. This is a great opportunity this year because of everything that's going on for us to make headway in making sure that there's new governance structures for the CTEs, both in the high school and the adult side of CTE, but also how we fund CTE as well. And getting, moving away from the funding formula that we have now where the money follows the child and it's disadvantages the high school budget.
Yes.
And changing that whole dynamic so that we can get more flow into the career centers as well to give students a full opportunity to recognize what opportunities are out there for them. So whether they go to college or not, if they can get into the career center, they may find something that may be more enjoyable to them.
Yes. So you're not asking a question, but if you don't mind, I'd like to, there he is. I'd like to introduce Tim Combs again. Tim has an incredible relationship with the Hannaford Career Center, and he has a passion like all of us, but it's specific to that issue that you're talking about. So Tim, if you don't mind, would you?
Yeah. I'd actually like to hand out, I spoke a couple of days ago with our superintendent. Let's probably just let you pass them down the line. I spoke with our superintendent a couple of days ago. And she wanted me to bring these points to you folks. And I thought it was real important that I speak with her and the instructor, Nick Cantrick, who I work very closely with day to day. Our kids, unfortunately, they have a very limited amount of people that actually sign up for the programs, where we find that like Stafford, south of us, has overabundance of people signing up, and kids got turned away this year. So that was one of the things that I wanted to bring to you folks, is that if we restructure that boundary and the demographics in Vermont, which hasn't been done for over 40 years, I believe, if we could restructure that and reach out to these career centers as to who's got the overabundance of kids signing up and who doesn't, and try to get that demographics structured where we even out. And that will help with the cost per student, obviously, because it costs us a lot more money at Hannaford Career Center to teach these kids than it does somebody like Stafford who has a full boat.
Sure.
So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me, and especially to these superintendents of the career centers. I think that they can be a big portion of helping you folks out as well.
We've been talking with Nicole.
Yeah, great. She's a very smart lady. Thank you.
If I may. We come here today to say to you, we want to help. You asked if we had anything that, of course, we all have the same goals in this room, right? We want the kids to find a way to stay in Vermont. I have a daughter who graduated, went to Chicago, and she's coming back now after college. But we want them to stay in Vermont, and we want them to find meaningful work. I love this state. I raised my daughter in Rochester. She was raised by a village. And that's a great model. We all have capabilities, individuals, and each one of us has a way of looking at something. And so this group, we've been very lucky. Bright Futures took off. And the kids, I have these surveys. I can hand them out. I didn't bring enough for everyone.
If you
but
have
I'd
them
love to
electronically,
email.
you could send them to Anna Grace.
I will. On the first page alone, 7 children said, talking with others and seeing that people cared was the most important piece of it. Learning about new opportunities was the most important piece of it. So we are here as businesses to say, we're willing to invest. I'm willing to say, hey, if you've got a program and you want me to support some internships, you want me to support some apprenticeships, you want me to bring them in and teach them something, we'll do that. We will help. We're not just looking for you to do something. We are looking to act. And we've been trying to act in this small venue, but as a group, we are welcoming whatever you might think of out of the box where local businesses can help. I can't create anything. I have a passion for the trades because I am craft impaired. As my friends will tell you that. And I love when you can fix something. I love when you can make something. And I love what I do. And I'm an accountant, by the way. And it's not exciting, but I'm happy to teach people. My point is, we've come here today to say, you've got a tough job. We've been running things a certain way for a long time, and they have to change. And we know we've got to come alongside you in order to help you do that, to help our kids. We don't have enough kids. And Bethel Mills has been in business for 240 years. There's 170 employees. We are one of the best paying, best benefits in the state. I would stand up against anywhere, actually. I love my company. But my point is, these are good jobs. And we are very much looking forward to seeing kids coming in and take those jobs. So I'm going to go so far.
That's okay. Thank you.
So you working with the Department of Labor,
So,
apprenticeships, internships?
yeah, so Mike Harrington had come to this is the 4th time he's come. They did ask, I was invited to be on the Workforce Development Committee, but unfortunately was here as the president. I just was more than I could do. But I do hope to sit with them. And I think this is a great meeting, but I think sitting with each other in small groups and saying, so what are you looking at? How are you seeing this? We don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
We don't even know some of the things that you face. You brought a few of the pieces up when we visited yesterday evening. I don't know how to help you because I don't necessarily know what you're facing. And I don't want to sit here and say, well, why can't they just do that?
No, when you get 180 people, some have different views and.
And that's right. And it's very important to hear all of them. And I think that that collaboration is what makes the best end product.
But we need to provide hope for the younger kids in this state. We want to change the narrative from Vermont's largest export is our youth. That's been the narrative for years. And it's really, I mean, it gets to a point where it's kind of embarrassing, but it's the truth because we just can't retain them. Governor Scott brought up a few valid points during his speech. The average age in the trades is 54. So, I mean, you look around here and I bet our average age is probably above that. I'm 54 myself, so I can relate to that. So the average age is 54. We need 24,000 new homes built in this state in order to meet the housing needs of the state. And then you combine that with affordable housing, which I think affordable housing, if we went around the room and polled everybody what that meant, it would probably mean something different to each one of us. But to try and balance all of those things is going to be very difficult. And I believe it's all of our responsibilities here to be able to come together and make that happen. I don't think any of this is a one side of the aisle or the other side of the aisle issue. I think it's an issue that we are all in agreement on, regardless of your political views. So at least I'm hopeful that that's the way it is. When we went to Washington, we met with Sanders, Welch, and Balance offices. And the one thing that we brought up was workforce development, because we know that everybody recognizes that that needs to be addressed. We weren't talking about things that were not going to be heard. So, once again, we try to promote rather than discourage.
So the CTE programs do need to be expanded. Licensing within the programs themselves is very important. The Hartford offers as does Stratford and Rutland, I believe, even a hairdressing, I'm old, I'm 60, so hairdressing is what I say, but degree where you can be licensed when you come out. We are also looking at drivers and CDL programs coming back in to some degree into those programs. And again, we are happy to support that. I don't know that it necessarily has to be a tax, but some type of way to support those types of programs that help us in the end. Certainly it's a good conversation to have. We'd love to see introduction in junior high school, and we will start a push now with our organization to get into the high schools to the younger people. Male and female have to be in this industry. And so that's an important push as well, is to see it start a little bit earlier.
So we've spoken a lot. I'd like some questions.
I have ideas, questions. I have all kinds of things going in my head. And I just want to first thank you all for being here. And just also to share, we look for small business advocates or Vermont business advocates also. And I love hearing the success stories about people who are in different stages in their career and their companies staying on either within the family or being able to sell to other folks in the community. Just need to highlight that as something that we've heard from other businesses, as those can be challenging. And so to know that that's happening in this industry is really important for us to know and to be able to highlight to folks. So thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Serve, Learn, Earn. So that's an organization in Vermont that is actually paying young people to work in trades and teaching them how to be good employees early. And that might be an interesting partner opportunity for all of you.
I'm sorry, what was it?
Serve, Learn,
Serve,
Earn.
Learn.
There's 4 organizations that are part of Serve, Learn, Earn. That's BYCC, which is Vermont Youth Conservation Corps. You have Audubon Vermont, Vermont Works for Women and Resource.
Okay.
So they all, that's something that we really promote in this committee. When we divide, when we let our appropriations committee know what we really are looking for to promote and to invest in, and that's one of the major ones, because they do a really good job of teaching our youth. And these are I think from 16 to 25 years of age. So that might be a resource for you to chat with them, to see if, you know, some of their, students could possibly, work for you in an intern or an apprenticeship mode.
Yeah.
Once they've developed some skills.
Okay, thank you. The thing I noticed too is there's a lot of different efforts like ours, but they're all going in their own direction. And it would be awesome if we could join as allies and get more done with less effort.
Well, that's interesting you say that. We've been working for the last few years on creating the Office of Workforce Workforce Expansion Strategy and Workforce Development. And we now have an executive director for Workforce Strategy and Development, Sabina Haskell. Her position is under the governor. So although she's an executive director, not a secretary or commissioner, she sits right below the governor.
So she's appointed?
Yeah.
She's appointed by the governor. She just started her job in January. We have a new constituted state workforce development board, where it was 63 members before. It's down to 27 now.
I
see, much more nimble.
Yes.
But we'll create a lot of different subcommittees. So some of you may be asked to sit on those subcommittees. As we move forward, we just had our first meeting last Monday. So that's starting to gear up, but the purpose of having that workforce development director there is to coordinate everything that's going on in the state, catalog it, and then how do we coordinate everybody so that we're going in the same direction?
Yeah.
We're not duplicating.
Right.
We want to make sure we're not duplicating efforts because that costs us a lot of money.
Yeah.
So we're trying to be more strategic on how we money flows into the workforce. And, you know, this year has been a difficult year because of things that are happening in Washington.
What's happening in Washington?
On the news tonight, I don't know.
Depends on what channel you watch.
That's cherry blossom.
Oh, yeah. I was just there. They're gone. They've already gone by.
But that's, you know, so we're not able to invest that much this year.
Yes.
Because we have to reserve some funds because we don't know what's going on.
Correct. Similar as our businesses. You know, we're nimble, but you can only do so much in uncertain times.
But so we need to make sure that the monies that flow into workforce and economic development are, we're not duplicating.
Yeah. Well, just to throw it out there, our event that we host at the Randolph campus costs us about $6,000 a year. So, yeah, which for us isn't a very heavy lift, but you know, if everybody's doing that and we are duplicating, then we're wasting money.
Right. Yeah. I think if you coordinate with Department of Labor, because they're hosting job fairs around the state as well, making sure that you know, you're doing your area, and then they're not coming in the week after and
doing the same thing.
But
Claudia, I think you.
So all of these organizations that you listed, are they all nonprofits?
Yeah.
And so they're not connected to the state. See, that's something that we can actually, I mean, they're connected in a way of funding perhaps,
Right.
but that's something that, and I know Sabina, so I can get with her, but that's something we can do.
Mhm.
And I can call these people and say, hey, let's
Exactly.
talk.
Yeah.
And make it a better, you know, who are you looking at? Who are you looking at? And find those resources for the young people that are coming and saying, oh, you know, I want to try this. So these are great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I actually worked with Resource last year in Middlebury. And they had more of the younger adults looking for a second chance.
Yeah, which is great.
Which is great, yeah. And I actually have posted either 3 or 4 individuals at our store. I offered one person a job. Unfortunately, they weren't really ready at that point. But one of my best customers actually hired 2 people, and one of them is thriving. It's a good win.
Yeah, that's a point we should also make. We host this event with the hopes of eventually getting an employee or 2 working directly for us. But we also understand that we just need them to be in the trades because those are our customers. Without customers, we're not in business. In the early stages, hey there, come on in. That's okay, no apologies. In the early stages of the event, we thought, okay, how do we measure this for success? And we came to the conclusion that we didn't need to. We just needed to keep doing what we were doing. And success would come in several ways. So it's, I guess ultimately what I'm saying is it's not a self-serving event. It's for the betterment of all of Vermont.
So it seems like folks are pretty connected to career technical education centers, and this committee is dealing with some of those issues. A little pause right now, but dealing with some of the governance issues, and well, actually going back to we received a lot of testimony around the need for better alignment, collaboration between the CTEs and the high schools. And we're considering a bunch of options, but I'm curious as to well, I know Tim, knows from Nicole, what she thinks about things, but I was curious about how you think, because it's all about improving access for kids to CTE. And if you had any thoughts about, how that works, collaboration, alignment, maybe even governance, that kind of stuff. Curious.
So we have a friend out in New York who has a nonprofit, and he's gone to the guidance counselors. This is a workforce challenge to educate the guidance counselors. So that the guidance, somehow the trades became, everybody had to go to college. You got to go to college. And I think that actually will help having guidance counselors understand the opportunities in the trade.
Yeah, I think I would echo that as well. But the biggest thing I think is the money. The money following the student. So when you're taking a portion of the high school's budget away from them by sending them to the CTE programs, where, let's face it, about 50% of our kids would thrive with the CTE program and become successful. But unfortunately, they're not getting that opportunity, I believe, and I think it's unfortunate because of that money issue. So the funding separately is huge. I think that's probably the first step, honestly.
And then there'd be transportation challenges, I'm assuming as well. I don't have an answer for that, but getting the kids to and from where they need to be is a challenge.
So Jeremy brings up a very good point. At Bright Futures, we have schools that come from the North Country, and they get to Bright Futures earlier than the kids that come from Randolph, which is right down the street from the college campus. Because of the way the transportation happens, they go to their feed school first and then have to get on a bus, in Rochester, like 27 buses coming over the mountain. And then they get to the tech center. So they actually lose all this time, right, on a bus that they might not need to if they could just get there.
I think if you guys invested in helicopters, that would probably solve a lot of these issues. Yes, sure. I'm good with electric. Yes.
I have a sort of an idea and a question.
Okay.
So I met with a constituent on Monday, who's the executive director of Vermont After School. And she was talking about their focus with after school programming, really trying to broaden it so there's vibrant after school programming across the state. And with the older grades, kind of middle school up, really focusing it on workforce readiness and kind of being, learning about, basically kind of starting to learn about
Just an introduction.
Yeah, and trades and STEM stuff is all stuff that they're really interested in. They've been doing programs, so it might be an idea of a connection.
Absolutely.
For those local, especially for like a local store, can be connected with the local after school programming to do introductions to your work.
Sure. So yeah, I'm sure you guys are familiar with Carolyn Brannigan.
Yeah.
She was my life skills teacher in middle school.
Nice.
Yeah. And I don't know that we offer
Yeah.
that curriculum in
Yeah.
the middle school anymore.
I think they're trying to, like, the idea with trying to bring some of that into the after school programming and also have it be like introduction to, so like starting to learn about CTE stuff in middle school, middle school, but through the after school program. Yeah. That was just an idea.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah.
We actually have been asked to do materials. We've donated materials to these.
Oh, great.
But
Excellent.
what's funny is, and I think we're just waking up. It's kind of like waking up at 60 and realizing you haven't really thought about retirement savings. And as a company now, we realized it's just sending them some plywood and some fasteners isn't what we need to do. We need to actually go over there and help them. So
The nice thing about that is that ideally there's programs throughout the state, right? So your members from around the state can.
Yeah, oh yeah, we covered the entire state. As you, one of the handouts shows, we are all over the map.
Yep. And then my question is about kind of that challenges or supports that would be helpful for hiring teenagers, or, you know, whether or not many of your members hire teenagers.
We do.
Which is a challenge, right?
I'll speak first. We hire, because we have 7 locations throughout the state, that affords us the opportunity to try and get summer help through the local high school. So we do develop relationships, some stronger than others, in the places where we have our shops. But we hire 1 to 2 students, but they don't seem to continue on after high school. They go off and they pursue a career or a college education, but we've at least introduced them to the industry. We have one very successful young man that he started working for us. I work out of our Manchester office, but I travel all over the state because of my responsibilities within the company. But this individual started as a material handler in the yard and has worked his way up through the ranks after going to UVM, and he actually came back to work for us. But that's just one of thousands. But we do hire summer help. We don't look for any financial assistance in doing that. We just want to introduce them to the field. And what often happens is the contractors will come in and say, "Hey, why are you working here?" "Come work for me. You know, I think I can pay a little better and the working conditions might be better." And as an 18-year-old, you're thinking, "Yeah, that sounds great," which is fine, because once again, that's another person that becomes a customer of ours. And I'll let others speak about their hiring practices with high school students or others.
Yeah, and our career center does a really good job. Nick, the instructor down there, does a great job getting kids out into the fields and co-oping. In fact, I think in the next week or so, a lot of the students will be reaching out and branching out with whether it be an electrical company or a contractor. I've posted 3 or 4 individuals that come for a week or whatever and just see what a material handler does, or they come in and maybe shadow me for a day as a purchaser and general manager of the store. So we work pretty closely with the career centers, and they do a great job co-opting the kids out, and the insurance is paid for these kids to be able to work out in the field. So there's no reason for us not to do it.
Yeah.
So Bethel Mills has always had relationships with the high schools, whether they're the career or not. We bring the children in. And one of the things that we as an employer have learned, and what I believe can be put out to employers in Vermont today, is that you have to meet these kids where they are. Right? They are texting, they are social media. This is a different way of communicating than we have. They need to have that opportunity. You need to give them a break to say, "Hey, go ahead and use your phone." But in addition, you need to say, "I know nothing about Facebook. Why don't you show me?" When you get them in the office, not that I'll ever use it, but why don't you say that we have to embrace that.
Yeah.
It's so important that they understand that they belong in that office as much as I do, and that they bring something to the table that I don't know. And so, and that's actually out in the yard as well, or in the lumber. Where does this fit for you? Where does this work? So, educating employers on how to deal with, what are they called now? What's that generation? The new generation?
I don't even know where we're
I don't know what
at.
they-
Z?
It's
Alpha.
They're coming in, and when they leave the state, they find, help them with their transportation. And we don't have public transportation here, so as an employer, help them. You're paying. We never pay minimum wage. We always pay, well above minimum wage. But my point is, help these kids, right? Because they can't take a $3 train to get to you. So it's a different mentality as well that I think that we have to foster going out.
So thank you very much for providing some of the information that's here on this sheet, as it's, really helpful to be reminded that the industry is about millwork. It's also about computer systems.
Yeah.
It's about HR. It's about a number of different occupations. I know we've talked about how CTE touches on and has direct relationships with the work that's within your industry. Do you find that some of the credential programs at the community college or other of state, college systems have been valuable to you? Are you seeing people, you having connections with those, sort of that branch of our education system? Is there value in sort of some of the credits that they're offering to the work that you do?
Absolutely. So VTC, which is now Vermont, so they have a phenomenal construction program, construction management, architectural design. We have several people we've hired from there. When I first went to speak there as a member of this board, there were 30 to 40 students there. Now sometimes we get 6. With that said, they also have at Champlain excellent bookkeeping, right, and business management. So does, and those skills are very. I love that program. They come in and no nonsense. They know how to work. So I would hire from those programs in a heartbeat.
But I think what you're getting at is there an alliance there? And there is not.
Or somewhat. We have our
We have it
VL,
with VTC.
we have our.
Yes, but it's not,
scholarships that we offer.
right, it's not, we don't have anything with community colleges. We don't have.
Yeah,
anything
not with the community.
With all of those that you mentioned.
So I was looking at the map of the
Yeah.
50 locations, thinking about, the
Sure.
CVs in Brattleboro,
Yeah.
in Bennington, and whether sort of that more local connection is something that's, that has some value or could add some value to students, particularly where there's transportation.
Yes.
Just being close to the resource for the skills that you may
Yeah.
avail.
Unfortunately, nobody can afford to live in Manchester, Vermont, so everybody commutes to work there.
That's true. That's
I'm just telling it the way it is.
Oh, yeah.
I commute there because I can't afford to live in Manchester.
Looking at, the different jobs within the profession with your particular work. I see some things that definitely require some certification, CDL driver, stuff like that. Are there other ones? Because, part of what our committee is always looking for is finding opportunities to give people the credentials that they can then, use across the profession.
Sure.
So are there other ones? I mean,
I can start with that. Yes.
I don't know if
There's crane training, which is required. It's a federal requirement that OSHA manages, I guess, or administers. But in order for us to put an employee through crane training, it doesn't make sense unless they already have a CDL, because that wallboard crane is mounted on a CDL vehicle that's required. You're required to have the CDL. Forklift training is another certification, but you have to be 18 years old in order to have a forklift certification. There are other specific certifications, but they're typically not something that someone young can acquire. You have to be a certain age. So was that like a question? Or anybody else want to jump in on that?
Are there other ones in there? Like I have no idea if being an estimator requires.
Yes.
School, for example.
Yeah,
Even if it's just a class or two.
Estimators typically are college graduates.
Okay. Yeah. So there are specific things that I guess I'm trying to think of what we could do to help you get the training to the people that need it.
At Bethel Mills, we aren't college educated in our estimating department, and a lot of our people are coming out of being contractors, and the NRLA, which is our bigger group, offers blueprint reading classes and that sort of thing. But yes, to that, we love somebody who could, read blueprints and learn takeoff skills. Absolutely. I think the VTC now, and I'm sorry to keep calling, but Vermont State College Rental offers
Vermont State University.
You said working for 20 years. So they offer a certification as well. But yes, we could use help with that.
Yeah. And we being the NRLA, which also there's the Lumber and Building Material Dealers Foundation, which is associated with the NRLA. That foundation focuses specifically on education, and they provide these programs. They develop these programs in-house. So there may be opportunities there to connect high school students with some of the courses that are already developed by the LBMDF. It's another opportunity that should be considered, because it would get them a jump start into the industry in that capacity.
One thing, then
Yes.
That also ties them in a little bit.
Yes.
I see there's a track.
Yeah. And they either say, wow, this is really interesting and I love it, I want more, or I don't ever want to see that again. But the earlier they are making those decisions, the better. I still don't know what I want to do, but I think time's running out anyways, so.
Forklift, you mentioned that you have to be 18 years old.
Correct.
And is that a state or is that a federal?
Federal. Yes. There has been some discussion at different levels of trying to reduce that to 16. But it's not like driving a car. I myself teach all of our employees the forklift training portion of things because I want it to be done consistently. And I try to scare the hell out of everybody by saying, this is a 15,000 pound piece of steel that doesn't care what your name is, where you live, how much you make. If you don't treat it with respect and it starts to tip over and you make a bad decision to try to get out of that forklift while it's happening, it's over. You're not going home because 15,000 pounds of steel is not going to be forgiving. So I'm on the fence about making it younger because it's a huge responsibility. Even with some folks that for us have worked for us for years and years, they are very good at what they do, but they become a little bit complacent. They start to develop a few bad habits, and fortunately, they just remain lucky for a period of time and nothing catastrophic happens and hasn't happened. But I would not be an advocate of lowering the age requirement for the forklift certification.
We talked to Career Center about providing that training to career.
I know we've had a discussion about that. I just can't remember in what forum that was. I think the discussion may have ended because you have to be 18.
Right?
Not when they're working in the Career Center.
Really?
As long as they're being trained as long as it's a school function.
Yeah.
And they're being trained that students are, because it all has to do with labor laws.
Okay. So you're saying you could teach potentially if there was an opportunity.
I know North Country Career Center teaches heavy equipment.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be 18. You have to be 18 to get your license and to get certified.
Right.
But you can be trained
at an earlier age
through the Career Center.
Interesting. Yeah, we'd love to introduce that to the Career Centers, the forklift training.
There's other things that you're looking at, even using skill saws, and can't do that until you're 18 at work.
Yeah.
But you can learn that skill at the Career Center.
And that what happens with us is if we hire somebody new and they have no experience, that process to get them ready for the actual driving test that certifies them takes months. So that would be a huge help to our industry if there was some opportunity to introduce that to the CTEs.
And there might be a Career Center that would be willing to, the one or two around the state that would be willing to work with, your members and.
Yeah. And I'm sure that we could somehow come up with providing a forklift to be utilized, which those things are cheap. They're only $80,000 now.
Be a great opportunity.
The electric ones anyways, which is the direction that we're starting to go. We went slowly into that pool at the shallow end, and now we're wading out more because we found that they are reliable. They are the user acceptance is there from the operators. We've gone through a couple of winter seasons with them and they're reliable. So that's where we're going to continue to invest when we can, when it makes sense.
One of the things that we've heard pretty consistently from career centers across the state is that it's hard to get teachers who can teach these trades because they can make so much more money in the trade. And they also have to get licensure, or they have to get teacher training in addition to it. And so this is like brainstorming, and I'm sure you've been thinking about this too. Are there ways that you can encourage people or give them a year or two to go do that and then come back? Or, is there something
from our businesses?
Yeah. Like, is that something that, because, we can own, right?
Well,
It's such a big.
that's like, the risk is we give them that opportunity and they love it and they never come back. But at the same time, they would be providing a very helpful, beneficial service to our industry indirectly. But the challenges we're faced with in recruiting and retaining talent in the employee pool it's like we're back in the COVID times. We feel like anyways, for a while after COVID, it was like, okay, people are coming back to work now. This is great. And now I don't want to be disrespectful, but it's like, man, we have positions we have to fill. We're forced to hire the best of the worst applicants. And I know that sounds really mean and disrespectful, but from my perspective, that's just the truth. And there's a constant churn of, we've got our core group of employees that are committed to being RK Miles employees, that see the value of the benefit package and all that. But then there's this little circle that keeps churning in and out of the company. Somebody comes in, they go out. Somebody comes in, they go out. Every week or two, our human resources department sends out an email to say, these employees have left. Please welcome these employees. And it's discouraging because a lot of them aren't recognizing the opportunity they have, and they're not giving it the chance, because a lot of those positions that churn require physical labor, and nobody wants to perform physical labor anymore.
And that takes me to somebody who's getting near the end of their career.
Yeah.
How do we encourage them to stay in it?
Yeah.
5 more years to teach?
Sure.
So that we can, right? So what are
That's the better fit.
So what are those kind of opportunities? And I'm hoping that you're thinking about those, because I think that's that partnership that we need with.
Yeah.
How to do that.
I have 5 contractors that came to Bright Futures, all at the age of retirement, who have come to me since that, and they want to be more involved. The young people, just for 1 second, that came, that are the teachers right now, they got to meet the governor this year. They got to come up and get an award with their student, their Shining Star student, and they had to shake the hand of the governor, and that was such an honor because they work hard. And so the issue, I think, does to that teacher certification piece. Most of these are master carpenters, and they have a way of working. And I would love to find out for everybody here what the requirements are to have them teach. Because when they come and sit at my desk and say, what can I do to be more involved? I can say, go get certified and teach, even if you're doing it 2 days a week or part-time. So where would I get some?
That's Ruth Durkee at the Agency of Education.
Durkee?
Durkee, D-U-R-K-E.
A lot of our retirees, they don't really want to retire, but financially, it's the time that makes the most sense for them. And we ask, what are you going to do now? And they say, I have no idea. So I don't have any questions that we have to answer in my notebook, but I have some things that you've given us to look into. So,
and it's not just at the high school level, but it's also at the adult CTE level. Those are two separate things that are going on.
Yes.
And so the adult level is more in the evenings. So you may have some people that have an interest in providing that training in the evenings too. So they should be talking with their career centers. Also, and with Ruth Durkee, but the career center directors can get them connected and talk to them on how they can move forward.
Yeah, the adults shouldn't be left out of this discussion. That oftentimes we focus on the youth, we focus on the youth, but adults looking for a fresh start or another challenge, I think, are a big part of the discussion that oftentimes get left out.
I think of this as the master electrician issue where they don't have certification to teach. They have all the information, but they have to go through additional steps just to be able to teach.
Correct.
And you can't tell me they can't teach.
Right.
At current state. Is that a barrier that we are putting in place?
To require.
For federal or for state? Because again, if a master electrician, you can't tell me they can't teach it.
Well,
yeah. They're the subject matter expert.
Right.
Well, they know the subject matter. Do they know how to teach it?
Correct. Yeah. Some people are really good at what they do, but just don't have the ability to teach. Understood.
There's a lot more to teaching than this. So
yeah.
I think there is a process to it. I think there's a need. All our teachers that are teaching all the other subjects, they have to have credentials too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's no different, I think, for them. It's just a little difficult because the pay scale is a whole lot different teaching than it is being out in the trades right now. So
yeah. Well, if you've tried to get a plumber, electrician, or anybody at your home, when you get the bill, you probably have a little sticker shock.
My son's a master electrician.
Yeah, he's doing probably quite well.
Yeah.
Because the end of the cul-de-sac used to be doctors and lawyers and accountants. And now it's truck drivers, electricians, and carpenters, which is not a problem in my mind. They're finally getting the money that they've deserved and earned for years. I'm with you. I don't know what to do about it.
Well,
I'm right with that. I'm right there with you.
it's pretty simple. I mean, we would have to just say it's not a requirement.
Yeah.
And, well,
I can't disagree more. There are people who, I mean, people who can teach and people who can't teach and people who,
But if there was a vetting process,
and there is.
yeah. So what you're saying is there's nothing to change. We just need to introduce more people into that opportunity to see if they can actually do it. Okay.
We all have to remember they're teaching, generally, there are students that are in high school, so.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we run into that with employees, like with succession planning. Some of our best employees don't want anything to do with training their replacement. That's not what I signed up for. I don't want to do it. I'm not good at it. Leave me alone and just let me retire. So I think we're at 10, right?
We are at 10.
So there's one thing else I'd like to say, and it's kind of a joke, but do you know how to turn $40 into 400? Put $40 of gas in your car and drive to work. That's what it boils down to right now, because I get this email from the Department of Labor, I think weekly, 6,800 jobs available, 8,000 jobs available, all these jobs available. We need to get them, whoever them is, back to work. And we need to include the youth in that process so that we can teach them good work ethic if their parents haven't, which I'm going to go on the record as saying I don't believe parents are teaching their kids good work ethic anymore. They have a different definition of what that is. And then reintroducing adults into the industry that maybe want a second career, second chance.
Thank you all for joining us this morning. We certainly appreciate the conversation. It was,
So did we accomplish what we came here for? Because we wanted you to know that we care. You probably know that already, but I want to ask everybody else here. Do you feel like we care? Okay.
just so
If you don't care.
You're preaching to the choir.
Yeah, if it doesn't come.
So much. I've walked away with emails and names.
Yeah.
And you are allowing, you've given a lot to us. So thank you. We're going to go out and work for you.
Good.
And if any, I think it would be funneled through Bill, if you had any follow-up. He's.
Well, I think if you have, if you're having a hard time finding an email address, you email Anna Grace. A lot of these people we deal with. So
It's right here.
In your corner. Yeah, I'm in your corner with you.
Well, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
You at lunch.
We're rooting for you. Let's put it that way.
Thank you.
We'll send this, respond.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I think it'll be uplifting for you all to see, what they have to say. It was certainly for me.
And I think the most important thing about that survey is we had over 200 students. We had that many
178 replied.
reply.
Yeah.
So
That's a really good
shows interest in what we're doing. Yes. It wasn't a requirement.
Thank you all. Have a great day.
Thank you. It's a different thing. Yeah, we'll see you at lunch. Sorry. Thank you. How you guys holding up?
Get a doozy.
Yeah.
I want to argue with you so much right now, but not on.
We should talk about it more. It's like,
Well,
I see
they're
like on
already
the
there. I
tennis
mean,
court,
it's their
right?
bill.
It's simple
If it's not
symbols.
going out there, so we don't need.
Some people are so forward, you know, that she's sorry. Yeah, break it down to teach anybody and.
Hey, how are you?
With you eating. But
We're still alive, just so.
If I catch
On television.
this, oh,
Just let everybody know.
Okay, let's, Adam, if you wanna have a seat. So we're switching now from our lumber dealers now to continue to talk about TIF. And Adam, that's one with us. Good morning, thank you for joining us. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so we're good to go.
Okay,
We got abandoned here.
that's all right. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Adam Necrason, Necrason Group, here with Hula Ride Your Bike. And I'm here to really help you connect with Russ Scully and Andrew Foley. And so please anticipate me providing an introduction and overview, and then hearing from Russ back to me for some more connecting, and then to Andrew, and then questions and answers. And so a little unusual, but appreciate that opportunity. And to, help, Teo's here with me, and hopefully we'll have the screen share on and off because there's some key slides that we want to share with you. So first, at the highest level of overview, this is really exciting to be bringing you something that is happening at the intersection of entrepreneurial spirit, housing development, growing the economy, jobs, and cleaning up Lake Champlain. And to jump to the very end, the legislation you're considering, we support that legislation. And at the bottom line is need it, because but for CHIP, the excitement we're about to showcase for you cannot happen. Okay, and so we're going to unpack that together a little bit more, but this is going now for the overview of our time with you. We're going to introduce Hula, which is an exciting job generator in Northwest Vermont. You're going to hear about the Hula adjacent site where the proposed housing development that we're going to be talking about wants to happen. Russ Scully will be talking about a bunch of that. Then we're going to transition over to Andrew with the Jonathan Rose Company, who is the nationally experienced project partner that will talk about their experience nationally and then get into a little bit of the positive aspects of the legislation, because we're really here to do two things: showcase this project that is under development and support the legislation from the Senate that you're working on. Okay. And so with that kind of high level overview, we're going to start by showcasing a few slides just to get you oriented. Where are we? Because we're bringing you something that is wants to be the largest housing development in Vermont history. At the back one to the Seacord. Here we are. Okay, so you're going to be learning about the Seacord area in Burlington, which is in the south end. And what you're going to be hearing about is a 13-acre site we're going to get to, where there are 3 owners trying to move towards building over 1,000 units of affordable housing with a mix of affordability involved. And there's a lot of excitement at this site with some local zoning that's been created. And then really what's exciting is that the laws you've been creating, the public policy you've been creating is working because it's attracting development. Some of you may know, and for others to learn about, you've passed this Act 250 legislation that, creates in community centers signals for ways you can get pre-permitted. And so this is an example of where local zoning is in pre-permitting and Act 250 is pre-permitting, trying to say to development, we know you want regulatory certainty so that you can bring your investment interest to somewhere and know what the rules will be. And this is an example of it working. The third big component of this model of local zoning that's predictable, Act 250 that's predictable, is the infrastructure component and the public-private partnership that's needed to make it happen. And so this committee holds the third key piece, really the keystone to all this happening. But first, let's just give you a quick overview of Hula, which is a co-working space that has venture capital associated with it. It's incubating businesses, and it's a real huge success. And Russ is going to be talking about this, but so that he can have the screen when he's up. Russ Gully is the founder of Hula, and he's going to be telling you about a lot of awesome stuff that's happening there. You're all invited to come for a tour. We know you're busy, and so you'll get email offering Monday, May 5th. If you want to come up and get shown around Hula, we'd welcome that opportunity. Teo, the next slide for you to see. This is the Hula site. It's a former manufacturing plant that Russ Gully and partners have really turned into a huge job generator. And just to keep today's overview flowing, this is the site where there's these 13 acres. This is Hula, where all those people are working. And over here, next slide, is where this parcel is, right? Here's Hula. This is the south end of Burlington. Some of you are familiar with Pine Street. This is the new southern connector that's almost done connecting to 189. And there are 3 owners of this parcel, the city, Champlain College, and Hula, and they have a pre-development agreement that city council has approved. This is kind of a big deal. This is this is the model of what you folks can happen, where multiple property owners on a highly town center site are working with city council and have a pre-development agreement with the city that's been approved. The city's not just a property owner, they're the local zoning regulator. And so we're going to, with that overview, we'll go to Russ Scully to tell you about who's Hula, what are they all about, why is he interested in housing on this site, and some of the challenges that we face and why we're so excited about the Keystone, which is the CHIP provision, which is in your hands now. And so with that, we'll go to Russ Scully.
Good morning, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me okay.
You can, thank you.
Hey, thank you for that overview, Adam. That was very thorough. I'm here to add a little more color and just add in a little bit more texture to what Adam already shared. But yeah, as he pointed out, we started Hula. We launched Hula in 2020, just after COVID. The priority in creating Hula was really to create a workforce engine for the state, and in doing so, we curated the space to really look for companies that were hiring quickly. We were interested in really growing jobs as rapidly as we could. These are companies primarily in the technology space because those were the kinds of jobs that we really wanted to attract to Vermont. And in an effort to help them in growing the workforce, we set up, as Adam pointed out, we set up a venture fund so that we could help capitalize a lot of the companies who are looking to raise money in order to grow fast and hire more people. And so we created we built a syndicate of local investors in the area who are all excited about helping to further grow Vermont opportunities and creating additional workforce opportunities. And in doing so, we were able to really help launch a lot of companies and grow workforce at a rate that we hadn't seen before. And so, as you saw from that slide, it's a 14-acre campus, right on the shores of Lake Champlain. It's over 1,500 square feet of office space, co-working space. We've got about 100 different companies represented in those buildings, and now we're 5 years into it. And one of the things we've really learned from being really close with a lot of the entrepreneurs and business owners is that the biggest logjam they're facing right now is just the ability to hire people because of the lack of housing. And so I know that you're all familiar with this problem, but we hear it day in and day out. There's a lot of interesting companies that are really working to try to grow. They're trying to attract the right type of talent, and they're doing everything they can to really sell the area, particularly for people that might be coming in from out of state. And the challenge they're facing right now is that they can't complete the deal because the lack of housing is really creating a problem in terms of trying to get people to come in and accept a job, at one of these companies when it's really challenging to complete that final piece and locate a place where they can live. So early on in this project, we identified the fact that, listen, we're building something at scale here. So we were really thinking about the fact that we'd have 1,000 people in this building mixing and mingling and working and connecting every single day. We had parking on site for 300 cars. We were advised that we'd really need to fill that gap with another 400 parking spaces. Fortunately for us, this parking lot that you saw in one of those slides had ample space for us. The short story is that we initially started out with leasing 400 spaces from that parking lot. And then ultimately we went into a purchasing contract sometime shortly after that and ended up buying the property back in 2001. And soon after that, we realized, coming out of COVID, there's just less need for parking cars. And what we really needed to do was focus on housing. So that's when we started down the road of going to the city and talking to them about rezoning this area to allow for residential, because at the time it wasn't. That was a lengthy process, but we made it through. I think there was a lot of combined interest, obviously, as you know, with a housing crisis that everyone's kind of feeling across the country, particularly in Vermont. So we had a lot of support in helping us get the zoning change made to allow for us to think about building houses on that site. Fast forward to today, we have a development partner with Jonathan Rose Companies. Andrew Foley obviously is on the call. You're going to hear from him shortly. Really excited about this development partner. These guys are the nation's leading expert on building affordable housing. I think they really fit the spirit and intention of what we're trying to create. So we feel like we have the right partner to see this project through with us. And now what we're really trying to do is figure out, there's some challenges and some headwinds that we're facing that are not unique to Burlington, but these are, high cost of construction coming out of COVID, just higher cost of borrowing money than we've been used to in the past. And so the biggest challenge for this project right now is really trying to get the economics to pencil out. And so that's why we're here today. That's why this bill is so important, particularly to developers. These are developments that wouldn't occur without some sort of help. We need some kind of subsidy or some sort of creative financing and assistance in order to build housing. The dilemma we're all really facing is that we're in a housing crisis, but the current economic situation doesn't permit developers to build housing profitably. There's a huge gap in the financing of trying to cover the construction costs and keep the rent rates and rent rolls to market rate conditions. So that's the challenge we're facing today. That's why we're here talking to you, is essentially trying to figure out how we're going to close this gap. We really need support from the state and from the city. And so until we sort of figure out a creative solution towards helping us get there, we're really we're still at the starting blocks. We really can't move forward until we sort of solve these problems. So that's what we're here to talk about. And I'm just excited. Thank you, Adam, for getting us this far. Really appreciate everyone's time this morning. I'm here mostly just to answer questions and just help color in sort of what we're trying to do here. But I see this as a huge opportunity for the state. It's a huge opportunity for Burlington. And we're just looking forward to trying to break ground on this project so that we can create some necessary housing to keep this workforce engine going.
Great, Russ. Thank you. Mr. Chair, any questions at this point, or would you like us to forge ahead and do questions?
Yeah, I think if we go forward,
Understood. So as we're going to segue to Andrew, and to do that, a few things along the way to connect from what Russ has just said to the legislation, then over to Andrew. It's really public infrastructure, the sewers, the streets, the things that are traditionally considered kind of the local government's role in creating the infrastructure for development to happen. And Andrew can really talk about that, but the challenge is that the project finances themselves can't do the housing development and cover the public infrastructure. And so why we're so interested in the CHIP bill is that it's the creative tool for the public infrastructure to get in place so that the development can occur. I want to be clear, if I had mentioned the three property owners at Champlain College, the city of Burlington, and Hula, Ride Your Bike. And they're working together with a lot of partners. Champlain Housing Trust for affordable housing, VHFA, the full gamut of all the players that you would expect. This is not our first place where we've gone. Treasurer Pichek is highly involved. Governor Scott's administration has been super engaged and helpful. But as we transition to a little bit about Jonathan Rose, this one thought for all of you, because we're mindful you're from all over the state. We see this project as of statewide significance. You know, the housing challenge is a lag on the state's economy. If we can get this project built, it creates not just more housing for the northwest part of the state, but more income tax, more job growth, more of the things that we all are in it together for. And so at this scale, it's really something that we suggest is of statewide significance. And so far, that's been the reception that we've gotten. Now, Teo, about the Jonathan Rose Company, and Andrew will fill this in more, but some proof points just for you to see, because they are one of the nation's preeminent kind of impact-minded developers with decades of track record. And so it makes sense that they're the partner for that Russ Scully has sought out in the Hula crowd, because they're the right thing development community. And but we just wanted you to see, and Andrew can talk about this, but they've done a number of projects around the country. And this is just to create some visuals that their track record here of innovation, affordability, smart growth, all of that. And I think Andrew will talk about Valle Verde and Bronx and Teo, next slide. You know, you can see some work here in Philadelphia, in Washington, Neat Green Roof. You know, these folks are going to bring all of Vermont values to this: affordability, climate-friendly energy policy, you know, smart transportation hub. All of the things that this building has sent signals to the development community to be mindful of are in the DNA of this development crowd. So they're not being pushed into these concepts that the General Assembly has for 20 years put into place. They are natural for them. And so with that, over to Andrew Foley.
Thanks, Adam. And delighted to be here. For the record, I'm Andrew Foley, Director of Development for Jonathan Rose Companies. So we are a developer and owner of green, affordable, and mixed income housing across the country. We own residential properties in 14 states in the District of Columbia at this point, 19,000 units roughly across the country. We're based in New York, but have, you know, are proud that we get to work in communities across the nation that are committed to building mixed income, inclusive communities. So when Russ and his team reached out to us, we were immediately taken by the potential of what's going on in the South End, not only for the opportunity to build up to 1,400 units of housing that needed to address the challenges that are being faced across the country, but for the catalytic impact that housing will have on generating jobs and expanding the economic engine that is the Hula and the ecosystem for Vermont. So we think that this project, while it's about housing, the housing has so much potential to broaden the economic impact for the state in a really exciting way. So I think for those of you who've been to Hula, you can feel the energy as you're walking through the halls and the startups that are there, the expansion that's happening. As Russ has pointed out, the missing piece is housing for the workforce and housing for a range of incomes. So we're really delighted to be brought to the table to help address that challenge. So Adam pointed to a number of projects that we have done that illustrate our work. Projects in New York, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C. we're also developing out in Los Angeles and Chicago and Georgia. And I think just to summarize, I think the common thread through all of our projects are really, I think, three things. One is, we're proud to be at the forefront of green building and developing high performance projects. So we just finished building the largest passive house multifamily project in North America in East Harlem. Our founder, Jonathan Rose, since the late 80s, before LEED and some of these acronyms we now understand are commonplace, before a lot of that green building movement was happening, Jonathan was really leading the field and incorporating green building into our work. And we understand how important that is for Vermont and for the city of Burlington to continue to be at the forefront of building low carbon, zero carbon buildings and communities. The second thing is that all of our work includes a range of affordable income ranges so affordable workforce market rates. So the projects that were shown on those slides, and happy to provide more examples, both have housing, homeownership, rental, range of incomes, and then also the amenities that are needed to really round out the communities and have the social impact that we find so important. We believe that housing is a platform for economic development, social impact, and so all of our communities reflect those goals. And then thirdly, and perhaps most importantly for this conversation, is that all of our projects are public-private partnerships in one way or the other. We are in just about any example I can think of, we are working in partnership with municipalities and with states to come up with creative financing mechanisms, because when we're trying to do the deeply impactful development, it takes rolling up our sleeves to get these projects financed. And so as Russ has mentioned, and happy to elaborate on this, is that, while the housing crisis has never been more severe, many of the challenges to building housing have also never been so great. And the cost of construction, the cost of interest. I know there's been a lot of good testimony throughout this legislative session really elaborating on this. So we know that that's not news to you. And so that is why, we believe that, CHIP is such a fundamentally important piece for our project to be able to move forward. And, we're really pleased with the way it's been crafted and the flexibility that it provides, that gives us a range of options to find the best way forward in utilizing this resource.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. And so one more minute and then over to you, Mr. Chair, for committee questions. Just to call out a few things. We very much understand CHIP is a new model on the TIF district conversation, and we appreciate that. The project-based focus. As it relates to a few of the big key touch points, with or without but-for language, but for CHIP, these folks can't move forward. So they kind of squarely fit in the notion of we only want these tools being used in places that really need it. And then affordability. The project's committed to affordability by government policy in two ways already. The city zoning with inclusionary zoning and the Act 250 law, which says if you include in these places, if you include this certain amount of affordability, then you are pre-Act 250 approved. And it was the big thing 2 years ago, I think, here. And so nice job in that regard, because here's what it attracted. And so do know that as you're talking about affordability, it's baked in a couple different ways already for us. And so for sure it's included. And then one last thing as we transition, feeding many birds with the one seed here is on display, because for anything to happen at this site, first, a combined sewer overflow, the south end combined sewer overflow has to be fixed. Right now, this is the last of Burlington and Lake Champlain's big CSOs. It's bad when it rains. It's not a good thing. And so this project as part of what we're talking, when we're talking to you about infrastructure, and the city just had a good voter supported bond measure that will help in some ways on this, but we really need to break up the CSO to be able to stand up anything on this site. And so it's not just our project financing, it's that the public infrastructure is literally like no more water going on here until you get it separated from the storm system. And so, and that really motivates Russ. You know, the cleaning the lake is, you know, the first passion, in the housing is, you know, associated with that. So with that, questions, and Andrew's prepared to talk about CHIP or the details.
In the CHIP program, we've talked about a variety of different funding mechanisms. One being more traditional of the municipality bonds for the money, and they put in the infrastructure, you build on top of it. The other one is the municipality doesn't bond for the money, you absorb the cost of that, and then the municipality refunds you. And a third one, which we've talked about a little bit, but I don't think is in the bill, is the concept of tax stabilization, where they just give you a break on the taxes, but you cover it. Of those three options, which one do you like and why?
Andrew.
Yeah, great question. And we've been having a lot of conversations as we've been reviewing the bill about those options. As I think you've heard through others, there's pros and cons to each. And I would say that I think one of the benefits of the bill is that it provides flexibility to implement different approaches without narrowing in on one specific approach. So we have had projects in TIF districts that have done kind of what, and again, I'll just say I'm not a TIF expert, but what we consider to be more the conventional TIF approach of public bonds for public infrastructure, roads and streets, where, you know, we've participated in projects like that. We have participated in projects where there is a reimbursement direct into the project. You know, states like Colorado and Chicago, where we've done some TIF work. And then to the third option that you've pointed to, which we recognize is not in the bill, of tax stabilization, that is a common approach throughout the country. Here in New York as well, you know, that is the primary way to capture the value of future taxes and kind of finance the things we want today with the benefits for tomorrow. So all of them have you know, specific benefits, and it's not clear to us which one will ultimately be the right tool for us as we continue to work with the city of Burlington and our financing team to really craft this. I think one of the things, though, that we think it's important that the flexibility is provided so that the law doesn't narrow in on one tool that may not be, you know, the right application for all circumstances.
Thank you, Andrew.
Questions?
Thank you. Really appreciate the presentation and allowing us to have more discussion on this. So I've heard 900 units, 1,100 units, up to 1,400 units. So what? So many questions about that. But what brings you to this number? What makes you know, right, that if you build it, they will come? I mean, how does this, you know, I know we need housing, but what are, you know, and if I'm getting into like trade secrets, you can say that.
No, not at all. Great question. Yeah, we hear the numbers kind of flying around. So let me just to kind of set the record straight. I think what we are targeting is up to 1,400 units in a zoning planned unit development, right? Which we're hopeful will be making its way through the city's process this summer, which will give the ability to develop up to 1,400 units. And that's what we intend to be ensuring that the wastewater capacity, the traffic, you know, all of the impacts assume up to that amount. The ability to deliver up to that amount will vary and depending on market demand. It also clearly won't happen all at once, right? So I think we're focused on the initial phase and even phasing some site infrastructure over time, because we know that, you know, we're talking about really creating a neighborhood on a parking lot that used to be used by factory workers that worked across the street, right? So we are placemaking on a 13-acre scale, so it doesn't happen overnight. But yes, we would say that collectively across those 13 acres, the zoning provides the opportunity for roughly 1,400 units in total.
One PUD is what you're saying, or multiple? Yeah, multiple, you mean, you said.
Yeah, so and you know, there'll be much more on this as we continue to work with city planning on it, but you know, the site-wide plan unit development for the 13 acres is, I think, the next step in the process, and looking at the comprehensive site infrastructure solutions required to support, you know, such a large expansion of the south end.
So great question, Representative Granning, and it touches it. Let me just thread it into the bill a little bit in this way, and to color things a little more. The city has worked to kind of do advanced work on this site with the Secord zoning district, and you know, this is like your Act 250 bill, an attempt to like really signal ahead of time. And so on the site, in these areas, you can go 4 stories. In these areas, you can go 6. And then in these areas, you can go 8. And so they're kind of working with the city now on the algorithm of how do you match those densities limitations with the financing. And all along the way, the Act 250 law says 20% of that will be a defined amount of affordable housing. And so those are really the main kind of factors. But Russ's ambition is as much as is possible. And so that's where I think you get some of the out loud thinking on 900 to 1,400. Well, 1,400 would be the ideal. And then along the way that, you know, affordability stuff from the city and the Act 250 are there for them. Now into the bill, because I learned this from Andrew this morning. A lot of prep has gone into kind of coming to you folks. You know, the reality is that there's going to be some steps to building this full site out. It's not just a one-off. And how CHIP kind of feathers into that, there could be some CHIP, some more CHIP, and then a third CHIP, you know, and we know sewer and infrastructure need to be really addressed ahead of time and all figured out. But that when Andrew likes the flexibility, part of it is because it's not just one moment where we're doing, and some of the other TIFs I've been involved in, let's call them the Burlington specials. You know, so we've been in the district. We've done a lot of this work with the General Assembly on behalf of development interests. And those felt like one moment, right? It's this district, it's this TIF, it's all figured out there. Andrew is trying to figure out with Russ, what are the steps and how does the infrastructure build out along with the housing build out phase in through all of that. Right now, your bill is check, you know, with some minor suggestions that Andrew may want to touch on, just things that you have noted.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, just one thing that, you know, Russ and I and the team have been talking a little bit about is the, you know, improvements definition. And, you know, while I think the definition of improvements you know, implies that there a lot can be eligible, I think it does call out some few specific examples. And I think one of the specific examples that we would like to put forward for consideration is the idea of green infrastructure and particularly energy infrastructure. You know, Hula across the street gets tremendous advantage from geothermal, which reduces the demand on the energy infrastructure for the city of Burlington by generating its own on-site energy. The same opportunity applies at a district scale for this Secord project. And we think it's just a natural win-win for this project to be able to finance some of those costs, which can be prohibitive at scale when you're doing buildings over phasing. But clearly, as we all know, by reducing the demand on limited capacity in public utilities has a really clear benefit. And if you look through the definition, could it apply? Yes, without a change, but we think maybe to have some language that clarifies that that's the type of forward-thinking site infrastructure investments that we want to see in this work, I think would go a long way. Not only to advancing housing, but also advancing the climate goals of the state.
You talked to VITA at all? They have a loan program for green energy. That could be part of that. And I know they can't loan for housing projects, but they can certainly loan for green energy projects. So just thinking about where we can be creative.
We have not had conversations with them yet, but that's a great suggestion. So we're happy to follow up with them.
Hi, I'm curious to know, well, actually two things. One is that just from looking at your portfolio development projects, this would be on the larger side of your development projects. Do you have any hesitation about being able to get it over the line if it comes in at the 1,400 units?
No, not at all. And we are developing some very large scale projects. So for example, we are developing a project in Brooklyn right now that will be nearly 1,000 units of development over 6 buildings, and will include a 1.5 acre park and a public school. And so no, we don't. We like the opportunity to have large multi-phase projects that allow us to really think big. And as you can probably tell from Russ, Russ likes to think big as well. So no, we're up for the challenge and certainly capable of pulling it off.
Yeah, something that I've been kind of concerned about in thinking about some of these funding models is just the wave of uncertainty that we're kind of faced with, and understanding that these multi-phase projects, they take a long time.
Yeah.
Is there any concern about the sort of current economic landscape that gives you pause, or things that we should be thinking about?
Oh boy, that's it's a good question. We're all watching things play out day by day. There are a lot of uncertainties at every level in our work, with the tariff impacts, the pullback at the federal level of some of the resources that we were counting on to utilize for green, affordable mixed income housing. We've historically been one of the larger recipients of EPA funding under the Inflation Reduction Act, which has been really ground to a halt. So yeah, there's a lot of bad news in the last 6 months about this work, but what we've found is that and it does take a while for these projects to come together, but we find that if we roll up our sleeves, we can figure it out. But it is going back to it does need to be a public-private partnership where we're all working together to find ways to move housing forward, because the crisis is only deepening.
Yeah, and thanks, Andrew. I would just add to that quickly that the phase development here, it works relatively well, mostly because we have some existing infrastructure along Lakeside Avenue. So, the way that we're talking about phasing this across the site is, we're gonna place the first buildings where we have already sort of the most infrastructure. That being said, we still have to deal with, and I'm glad Adam brought it up, and I'm sorry I didn't mention it right at the top, but the CSO issue at Lakeside and Pine is a big known Achilles heel, in Burlington for the wastewater treatment plant. And one of the things that I'm particularly excited about that Adam mentioned is the idea of this project really catalyzing some of the work that's going to help clean up Lake Champlain. I've lived in Burlington for 25 years. I spent a lot of time on the lake. I started some retail businesses that really depend on getting people out on the lake. We're a big proponent of trying to increase recreational activities, from human-powered and wind-powered kind of vessels on Lake Champlain. The Burlington Surf Club sits on the site at Hula. We have a lot of kids learning to windsurf there all summer through camps that we put on. There's a number of people that come down there and use the waters there. We're also a stone's throw from the treatment plant at that site. So we know intimately well, how challenging and problematic that CSO can be, because on the 4 or 5 wet weather events that occur in the summertime, there are, as we all know, there are issues that are created in just overwhelming capacity at the plant, and which essentially results in a lot of pollution in Lake Champlain. So anyway, as Adam pointed out, I'm very familiar with those challenges, and one of the things I'm excited about in regards to this project is that I really think it's going to catalyze a lot of the activity that's going to help us to solve some of the combined sewer and wastewater outlets coming into this area. So anyway, going back to the phasing, we're going to phase this project in a way where we're going to use the existing infrastructure that's available to us by building on the Lakeside Avenue side of the site. That allows us also to kind of really lean on the balance of the site for parking, for staging, for things like that. So there'll be sort of the existing use of the site will still relatively remain in place as we phase this project out. I'm optimistic that we're gonna, figure out creative ways of financing this project. I think you're right to ask that question. I think we are living, a lot of uncertainty right now, right? We're all like Andrew said, we're going day by day here, but we feel an obligation and responsibility to really help try to, be creative and be entrepreneurial about how we're going to get ourselves out of this housing crisis and really solve the problem for some of our employers that are really trying to help build the future of the state with you in the jobs and the industries that we were really excited about. So, we'll put up a building, we'll put up another building. We're going to keep progressing as we can. But I understand, the concern about leaving this thing unfinished. I don't necessarily see that playing out, mostly because the unfinished area is still parking. And at the end of the day, as much as I don't like parking cars, we'll get into the whole car light sort of mission and sort of thought process we have around this project. The reality is, we're going to be able to park cars on the balance of this parking on this site for a long time to come. And then while we creatively work our way through the financing that allows us to continue to build housing.
Sorry, I have 2 more questions. What are they?
Yeah.
Really quick. And I'm also, thank you so much for that answer. I'm also curious about, you've been talking about a proportion of mixed income housing. Do you have a sense of what those proportions are going to look like? Or typically in your, I guess this is a question for Andrew, typically in your projects, what is that mix?
So we look at low-income housing being kind of at or below 80% of area median income, and that's how it's defined. And then what we would typically consider moderate income housing to be housing between 80 to 120% AMI. So we are in discussions with funding partners around how to deliver that moderate income bands at, that 80 to probably 100% AMI units. So the percentages aren't fixed yet, but we understand that one of the goals is to provide as much of a range of housing as possible, and we're going to do what the resources allow us to do.
Okay. Do you have just sort of examples from your other projects that you've done?
Sure. So we have a project here in New York City that is about to start construction where, up to 40% of the units were at that moderate income band. Now that came with a lot of city subsidy and state subsidy that New York City was and New York State were able to provide to kind of get the numbers to pencil out. We have projects. I think one of the projects on the slides that we shared has a 20% workforce housing band within it. And happy to provide other examples of our work if you're interested in hearing more about the moderate income workforce housing component.
Absolutely. I would definitely love to see more breakdowns of that. And then just the last question is, do you have a sense of vacancy rates in any of your properties?
Oh, well, I mean, in New York, our vacancy rates are, less than 2% because of the housing crisis. So, particularly in our affordable buildings, vacancy is very low because the demand is so high. We own over 100 properties, I think, roughly nationwide. So, but vacancy has been historically low because of just the demand for housing, particularly rental housing. So
we're almost out of time, guys. Just to thread it, understood. Just to thread it to this committee's work. With the partnership with Champlain Housing Trust, which is under development, Vermont has one of the most true and successful models with the Housing Conservation Board. And so when you annually send your letter to the Appropriations Committee saying, VHCB funding, on some levels, that's a key part of all of this because Champlain Housing has to bring some resources to the table for them to partner in on the deeply affordable component of it all. And so, again, this is the public-private partnership. It's in all of our hands to kind of get the resources to the table on the affordability component. Their commitment's there, but it's a resource-constrained space. And with the Act 250 provision, 20% needs to be in that zone. And so when we talk, Representative Granning, about getting to 1,400, it's like, well, you got to get to times 0.20 on affordability.
Yeah, and just one specific point on the moderate income, one of the key sources to that will be the VHFA's rental revolving loan fund source, which does permit some funding. So I think understanding the sizing and the capacity of that source to fund portions of the project will help us determine how much of that workforce housing moderate income we could provide.
Thanks very much. I'm sort of feeling like this is a good opportunity to highlight the anxieties we're all feeling about whether or not even existing models of federal assistance in programs are reliable anymore. And I think even going back to October, the Community and Economic Development Office of Burlington discussing this project, the thought was, well, what are some other things we could utilize if there's not this program already involved? And the EPA's community change grants was cited. And I think that we're seeing that in some instances, these previously we would assume reliable tranches of federal funding are not that anymore. With that in mind, what I'd like to talk about has to do with stability or certainty as much as we can. With the bill as you've seen it in 127, should it pass, how would that influence conversations that you would be having with project partners, with other organizations that are a part of this development, in giving, while there's nothing guaranteed in real estate development, how would this impact your sense of viability for this particular project?
Yeah, really appreciate that question. And it would have a tremendous positive impact on being able to demonstrate that the infrastructure improvements have a funding source. Challenges will remain to finding the rest of the funding needed for other components of the building that this funding will not be eligible for, but that will send a very clear signal that Vermont is backing this project and other projects like it and getting creative and finding solutions to solve this problem. So
Great question to wrap on, Mr. Chair, because back to the bill, you hold the keystone, and that's an hour of articulating. It's really on some levels, balls in your hands in that regard. And so we're here to help. We recognize there's a lot of advocates on this, and we defer to their leadership on the details of language. And but happy to and appreciate this opportunity. So thank you very much.
Thank you for coming in. We appreciate it. Sounds like an exciting project. I think has mentioned, there's always been this connotation of Burlington and New Vermont. But I think we all need to realize that Burlington is the economic engine for the state, and anything we can do to keep that engine running strong, we need to do. So we will do our due diligence on how we look at this new proposal, and hopefully we can push forward with it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Maybe we'll take 5 minutes, really 5. Back to around 11. It's important that we hear from